Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the Alpha Touring Challenge, Season 9 of North America's largest front-wheel drive series. As always, I'm your host, James East with Team Goon Squad Broadcasting, bringing the action Sandy P 60 frames a second as drivers getting ready to set sail here at the Summit Point Raceway, the full course. And I've got to say, a track that really lends itself well to front-wheel drive car racing. We've got 25 entries coming out here tonight, and going to be another great show. Let us know where you're from, who you're cheering on, as drivers will frequently have the broadcast pulled up on a separate monitor or device, and if not, they just about always go back and watch this thing over again, studying the tape. Looks like qualifying has come to a close here at Summit Point Raceway, and drivers are going to start getting gridded up on the starting finish line. Let's go ahead and run through the starting order today. On pole, Dan McFarland, the number 23 machine. Micah Hendricks starting second. Logan McKenzie starting third. James Carr starting fourth. Ian Diaz Bertolucci starting fifth. John Lawson starting sixth. Francois Schink starts seventh. Matt Zepka starting eighth. Eric Staitzer starting ninth. Ben Aiken will be starting 10th. We've got Edward Gorman starting 11th. Trevor Lambert-Lee starting 12th. Let's cycle it on back to Brian Saab starting 13th. Kevin Clark starts 14th. We've got Damon Mitchell starting 15th. Stephen Lakota starting 16th. Kurt Smith starting 17th. Christian Oates starting 18th. Brian Sohn starts 19th. Mark Darnell starting 20th. Luke Filippone starting 21st. Dom Savio starting 22nd. Jason Lynn starts 23rd. Delbert Maddox starting 24th. And let's tick that over one more time. There we go. Ross Johnson and the 999 machine will be rounding out the 25-car grid here today. A very healthy grid here at Summit Point. It's going to be a very busy turn one. And it's going to be a 60-minute race here today. Drivers have one fast repair available to them and 13 incident points that they can use. After that, they will have to serve a drive-through penalty here at Summit. Still waiting on Carr, Smith, Maddox, and Johnson to take the grid. And here we go. The lights will come on. Looks like Maddox and Johnson will not start here. And we are green flag racing. Let's see what Dan McFarland's going to do. Already in the midfield, we see some drivers shuffling around. Hendricks with a little bit better launch. Looks like he's getting a push from McKenzie there. As we start to whittle them up into turn one, they're bumping and grinding. Hendricks comes out on top in the number 1 machine. McFarland and Carr, second and third. They're side by side. We're just going to see what happens. They flick it to the left-hander. Oh, and look at that. That was McFarland all out of shape through the gravel trap. He's going to lose tons of positions, falling back to 8th, 9th. Eric Staitzer tries to take over that 9th place spot as they're side by side. Staitzer off in the grass. Oh, and a very precarious rejoin. Zepka gets absolutely drilled there, and the 490 machine didn't even see it coming. Hendricks with a big breakaway. Carr and Bertolucci battling for that 2nd place spot. You can also see John Lawson in tow in the 77. Who's that off track? That was, oh, I think that was Carr. Yes, it was. Carr holding on to 2nd place. Here comes John Lawson up into 3rd. Bertolucci's going to try and fire back here into turn 1. Hendricks out front. Oh, running almost 2 seconds faster than the rest of the field. They've got to be careful. If Hendricks gets a breakaway here, he's going to be tough to track down. As Lawson and Carr still side by side. McKenzie in that 04 machine trying to find a way to push through here. Looks like things are getting a little bit more settled. I think that was Carr off track again, the number 19 machine. Brian Saab also finds himself in a rough spot, trying to find a spot to rejoin. Now, Zepka and Staitzer both came down pit road together on that opening lap. I'm imagining both with a fair amount of damage. There's Bertolucci and McFarlane trading some paint here. These Alpha Touring Challenge drivers not afraid to muscle each other way around. And McFarlane showing these things still get pretty good traction on the grass here at Summit. I just heard somebody spin. It was John Lawson finds himself pointing the wrong direction. Drivers scattering everywhere in the start and finish line straight. It's so important to have good drive out of that final corner. And what a shot showing how far ahead Micah Hendricks is. 3 seconds up over the rest of the field. As you've got Ben Aiken, Edward Gorman battling tightly. Gorman the 137, Aiken the 623. Carr with another off track. Gonna lose 2 spots, one to McKenzie, one to Schink. Carr falls back to his original starting spot, which is 4th. Gotta agree with the fans. Hendricks, I don't know if he can be touched. I mean, granted, we're only 3 minutes into an hour-long race, but if Hendricks stays consistent like he normally does, a 3.5-second advantage, that is huge here for the Alpha Touring Challenge drivers. An absolute massive breakaway for the real-life karting pro, Hendricks. He'll have 23 of the 23 drivers out on track. Brian Saab has a solo off-track excursion. Edward Gorman in 7th. He's got pressure from Ben Aiken still. And the lap times keep getting faster and faster. Now McKenzie was able to click off a high 1:15, 0.3 off of Hendricks' fastest lap so far, but Hendricks just keeps repeating a faster and faster lap time up in front. Now the fuel window will open around lap 30, close around lap 40 for these drivers. Bertolucci and McFarlane battling for 6th. This has got to be frustrating for McFarlane. Has the pace to run at the very tippy top of the field, but a little bit of early session bumping and grinding here has put him back in that 6th place spot. And he is breathing all over the back, but look at this, side by side for 2nd. It's McKenzie and Schink putting on a show. Carr's going to slide through, but we've got another incident, this time involving McFarlane, as well as a couple other drivers I saw. It was McFarlane and Bertolucci tied up in an incident. Let's get the replay queued up, focusing on Dan McFarlane. Where is it going to be here? Oh, McFarlane, that looks like a massive amount of net code. So unfortunately, McFarlane's night going from bad to worse as he falls back now, 18 positions lost. Hendricks still out front, clicking off 115, low 115s, constantly improving. Now it took Bertolucci and McFarlane almost over 10 seconds to get back out on track. And look at this, that's Lakota and Smith. Side by side. I've called Lakota in a whole lot of races in the past. He's always quick in everything he gets behind the wheel on. Hendricks out front. We're watching Ost trying to fend off Kevin Clark in the 89. Lakota got a bit of a breakaway. John Lawson pulls up alongside Trevor Lambert-Lee. Lambert-Lee, the 333 machine. Lawson, the number 7. Looks like Lambert-Lee is going to tuck in behind Lawson at this point. McKenzie in 2nd also has a bit of a breakaway, 1.5 seconds up over Carr. Carr still has Francois Schink tucked in right behind by about 1/4 second. And look at the dirt all across the racing surface here at Summit Point with the off-track excursions and adventures we have seen from these drivers. So a few distinct battles going out on track. You've got Carr and Schink, about 3/10 separating the battle for third. If we go back to Kurt Smith in 11, he's got Oates, Clark, and it looks like Savio starting to close that gap as well. But I do love calling the races here, the Alpha Touring Challenges. I just saw Oates get a little bit squirrely there in the 157. But back up front, Drag racing for third. Francois Schink's going to try and work the inside line, that time by McKenzie. The first driver to dip into the 114s. Now that he's got some clean air on the hood of that 04 machine, feeling very, very comfortable. It seems like this start-finish line straight, we're seeing a lot of draft battling going on. Oates holds on to it with Clark and Smith in tow. Hendricks still out front by about 4 seconds. Gonna be interesting to see, can Micah McKenzie answer Micah Hendricks answer Logan McKenzie's fastest lap. Last time by, Hendricks clicked off a 115 flat, a 115.01. But that is over 2/10 slower than McKenzie did last time by. Still holding a 3.8 second gap over the rest of the field. And not too much traffic on the horizon here as Hendricks charges down the start-finish line straight. Let's see what it updates to. A 114.83, so he's feeling good here. Let's see what McKenzie does. A 114.593. So McKenzie feeling mighty quick. Will he have enough laps here to overcome that time disadvantage? Kurt Smith, Dom Savio battling for 13th. Savio trying to muscle his way up the inside line of Smith. Kevin Clark just ahead in the all-white 89 machine. We're going to get something going on the broadcast side. Hang tight. But we've got a poll for our viewers on the YouTube side of the broadcast. Can anyone track down Micah Hendricks here, as he has a very comfortable 3.7 second advantage? Waiting to see if Kurt Smith is going to try and catch back up to Kevin Clark. Already getting some votes coming in saying Hendricks is too far out. It's going to be interesting to see. Last time by, Hendricks and McKenzie almost identical lap times, right at that 115.03 or 04 mark. McKenzie's working very, very hard here. I think the big concern now is these drivers are making big moves is maybe tire management. We saw it at Daytona where drivers were using up a little bit of rubber early on, and that prevented them from making big charges. Speaking of charges, Savio and Oates bouncing off each other here. We've got Norman King with Mustard Seed Racing joining the spectator area. Kevin Clark has Kurt Smith in tow in the battle for 11th. Taking a look, hard charger out on track. Dom Savio, that number 81 machine, has showed a fair amount of aggressiveness, and here we go once more. He looks to the inside line of Oates. Oates is going to hold on to that position. Let's go a little bit further up. I see something else happening. Ben Aiken, John Lawson side by side. So it looks like Lawson is going to hold on to that P6 ahead of Aiken. Trevor Lambert-Lee right behind as well, kind of watching this battle unfold in the 333 machine. Now last time by, McKenzie 4/10 faster than Hendricks. So if all things stay the same, McKenzie might have a shot here of closing up to that number 1 machine. Now let me get the points pulled up on a separate screen. Coming into tonight, Carr was still your points leader. James Carr currently 4th in the number 19 machine. Logan McKenzie was in 2nd, but McKenzie only 4 points up over Micah Hendricks. So these two are going to be battling for every point they can find out on the circuit. Oh, here we go again. Aiken versus Lambert Lee. Be the battle for 7th. Aiken's going to guard that inside line. Lambert Lee looks for a little bit more momentum. Might have gotten a little bit of a bump there. Oh yeah, definitely that's what it was. Lambert Lee flashing the high beams at Aiken saying, hey bud, gotta leave me a little bit of room. And while that battle's going on, Kevin Clark still trying to shake off Kurt Smith. You can see Austin Savio right behind as well. And then a freight train of drivers behind Brian Sohn. He's got Jason Lynn, Luke Philippone, Dan McFarland, who's been having a very, very rough night here. Coming into tonight as well, Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport. Still holding on to the team championship. Breakfast for Dinner sits in 2nd, with Yellow Flag Motorsports currently 3rd in the team chase. Now Logan McKenzie in 2nd, slowly whittling away at the lead that Hendricks has. It's down to 2.8 seconds from race leader to Logan McKenzie, sitting strongly in 2nd. Let's go back up front. There's Micah Hendricks, getting ready to make his way onto the start-finish line stretch. Carrying as much speed as he can through that final corner. That last corner, so incredibly important to get good drive down the start-finish line. Hendricks with a 1:14.85. McKenzie answers back with a 1:14.68. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I think McKenzie, if he can keep the tires underneath him, has a good chance of reeling back in Hendricks. We go on board that 04 machine of Logan McKenzie. Very smooth on the inputs here. A little bit of a burp of the throttle, getting that thing settled. And into the tight left-hander. Dan Aiken, Trevor Lambert-Lee still having that battle for 7th. We saw a little bit of contact between these two just the lap prior that had that 333 machine flashing the high beams at Aiken. Lambert Lee staying right in tow of the 623 of Aiken. About 3/10 separating these two in the back portion of the raceway. Let's see. Is Lambert Lee? I thought he was going to take a big jab there up the inside line. Did not do it. But I'm waiting to see what's going to happen here. Lambert Lee seems to just be pacing Aiken and not quite able to find his way around. Oh, Oates just had a big off track there He might lose a spot here to Savio. Savio, the 81 machine, that's going to be his 9th spot gained. He is definitely the hard charger we have out on track thus far. And I'm waiting to see. I'm shocked that we haven't seen Lambert Lee try a big send into turn 1. I can't imagine he'd be trying to fuel save too much this early in the race. So Savio and Ost linked up 13th and 14th right behind them. That was McFarlane and Sohn. McFarlane unfortunately still down 14 spots from where he started after a very rough opening to today's feature event. Now, if you're watching the relative on the left side of your screen, Lambert Lee, Aiken, still haven't made any big moves here. The rest of the field getting a little bit more spread out. Hendricks, McKenzie, and Shink separated by a fair amount of seconds, as McKenzie has closed it to about 2.5 seconds back from Hendricks. But James Carr back and forth just set his fastest lap of the race the lap prior, so Carr trying to get some forward momentum here as well. Let's check in on the battle between Aiken and Lambert Lee. A quarter of a second between the two. Now, as we saw at Daytona, the draft not quite as pronounced in these cars that we've seen in others in the past, but still a long enough opportunity. And Lambert Lee seems to be content falling with Aiken here. Now, they are losing time to John Lawson in 6th every lap, so if Lambert Lee thinks he has the pace to catch up there and maybe scoot a little bit closer to the top 5, I would imagine he would be wanting to make that move sooner rather than later. Just on off-track report, Steve Lakota is going to lose a little bit of time to Damon Mitchell in 10th. And Kevin Clark in 11th will close the gap. Lakota running 10th out on track, the 94. He is up 6 spots gained so far. Another great 3-car battle at Savio, Ost, McFarlane. 13th, 14th, 15th. Keep an eye on McFarlane. He had the best pace in qualifying. But how is the traffic management going to treat that number 23 machine? McFarlane hops out of the draft there, gets back in it right behind Ost. Looked like he wants to go for a 2-for-1. All over the back bumper. Let's see, is McFarlane going to do something pretty wild into 1? As Ost decides, hey, it's a good time to try and make a pass on Savio. Because McFarlane really closing the gap behind. McFarlane hops to the outside line. Is he going to try and high-low maneuver? These Alpha Touring Challenge drivers trying to get the power down through turn 1, but it's tough to carry, or tough to drive these things in a point-and-shoot style. Definitely momentum cars. Oh, almost a little bit of contact there. McFarlane gets around Ost. Bumping and grinding. But McFarlane gains another spot back to his favor. Now he's going to put the pressure on Dom Savio in the 81. Less than a 10th separating these two drivers, battling for 13th. McFarlane trying to squeeze up along the inside. Savio shuts the door. But the laps go rather quickly here at Summit Point. Let's see, is McFarlane going to try and make a move up the inside into turn 1? I think he is. He pulls up alongside Savio, letting him know I'm here. And McFarlane makes it another spot gain in that number 23 machine. That's going to be an interesting storyline to follow along with. Another battle. John Lawson has caught up to Edward Gorman in the battle for 5th. Gorman the 137, Lawson the 77. Gorman dipping a couple of tires there off the racing tarmac. Very interested to see what the pit strategies are going to be out of these drivers. Going to be interesting. Will we see anybody look for an undercut here at Summit Point? Or is everybody kind of on the plan of driving these things until they're just about empty? Now, out of the 23 drivers that started, still 23 out on track. We had the 2 did not starts with Delbert Maddox and Ross Johnson. And it looks like James Carr slowly reeling in Francois Schink as well. So we may have a battle for third starting to shape up here. Here comes Lawson making that move on Gorman, or at least trying to. And it looks like that's going to be, oh, here we go. For the first time in a while, Logan McKenzie in second has got race leader Micah Hendricks with less than a second between the two. Hendricks has been closing that gap. We're focusing on Micah Hendricks. There's McKenzie on the left side of your screen trying to reel into the race leader last time by. Hendricks a 114.81, McKenzie a 114.61, gaining 2/10 on the race leader, and you can see Hendricks on the ragged edge. That was Francois Schink right behind as well. No, excuse me, that was both Hendricks and McKenzie dipping some tires into the gravel. And there's lap traffic on the horizon for Micah Hendricks. That's going to be Mark Darnell in the number 83 machine, who will be receiving the blue flag from race control. I'm very interested to see how this one shapes up as they charge down the start-finish line. Hendricks gaining a little bit more time back to his name. Looks off a 114.9. McKenzie answers with the identical lap time, also on 114.9, separated by 1,000th of a second. How is lap traffic going to be a factor? Meanwhile, Kurt Smith has a very hungry and a driving with the red mist, Dan McFarland right behind. McFarland's going to already look to the right side of the raceway to try and get set things up for turn one. Briefly hops back in the draft behind Smith, but McFarland not known to wait. Looks to the inside. Smith tries to cover, but just isn't going to be able to fire back against McFarland, who is aggressive as they're bumping and grinding there. Smith says, all right, if you're going to pass me, that's fine, but we got to get going. And here we go. The battle for the lead starting to shape up. That's Micah Hendricks, with Logan McKenzie hot on his heels. Mark Darnell, the number 23 machine, who is receiving the blue flag, takes the opportunity to come down pit road for a bit of an early stop. And we've got a battle for the lead, ladies and gentlemen. And for those that voted that somebody was going to be able to catch up to Micah Hendricks, you are spot on. McKenzie's just been chugging along here. Whittled away almost a 4-second gap that Hendricks had in his favor. Now the question is Hendricks going to keep pushing or follow along with that number one machine of Hendricks? Besides the start-finish line, we haven't seen too many side-by-side passes through the tighter portion of the raceway. So I almost wonder, is McKenzie going to wait to the start-finish line, then try and make a big send into turn one? I mean, he doesn't even have to worry about telegraphing that move as well. I mean, Hendricks surely has to expect it. Looks like McKenzie's gonna pace Hendricks for a little while longer. 3/10 separating the two. Another battle out on track is gonna be for third. Francois Schink, James Carr also separated by about a third of a second. Linked up nose to tail here. Now we've had a few drivers start their green flag pit stops. Luke Filippone, Brian Bobb, Bertolucci, Darnell all came down pit road around that lap 20 to 23 mark. So you have Hendricks and McKenzie linked up nose to tail, first and second. Schink and Carr linked up for third and fourth. Last time by, Hendricks clicked off his fastest lap of the race, a 1:14.77. Let's see if he improves on that. Has a bit of a fire underneath him. Is McKenzie behind? Yes, a 1:14.69. McKenzie matching the pace up here at front. And that is what a 7, almost an 8-second gap looks like to the battle for third. And Schink and Carr losing almost 3/10 a lap here to the top two drivers. Also looks like Edward Gorman has company from John Lawson again. Lawson all over the back of Gorman. Trying to look for a way around that number 8, a 137 machine. Lawson in the 77. It's Honda versus Hyundai. Gorman trying to cover and keep Lawson from coming around, but it looks like Lawson backed up the corner a little bit, that final corner, to get a good drive out. Lawson takes a peek to the inside line in turn 1. Thinks better of it. Hendricks, McKenzie still linked up nose to tail in front. Schink and Carr linked up third and fourth. Those drivers have been displayed the cross green and white flag. We are officially halfway through this main event. So still waiting for a large portion of the field to cross into pit road and commit. Drivers, I think it's going to be one of those races where drivers stay as long as they can. As I say that, Ben Aiken, the 623 down pit road. Gorman dips a couple of tires in the grass. John Lawson's going to make an attempt for the position. Who's going to come out on top here? Oh, it's going to be close. Gorman fires back the inside line, making that 77 of Lawson go the long way around, but Lawson makes it happen, keeping the grip. Now look at that, Dan McFarland, who has worked his way up to 11th, just set the fastest lap of the race, a 1:14.59. Aiken rolls back out on track after his green flag stop. Oh, and they're nose to tail there in the battle for 5th. Gorman wants to get that spot back from Lawson. Let's check back in on Micah Hendricks, still leading the charge here. Logan McKenzie in the 04. stalking him 3/10 behind. There's been a fair bit more lap traffic starting to show up. That's going to be the number 22 of Philippone. No, excuse me, the number 11, who's running 22nd, Luke Philippone. Kevin Clark down pit road. As Hendricks keeps getting faster here, a 1:14.67. I do wonder if McKenzie just trying to manage the tires at this point of the race. Kevin Clark rolls out of pit road. Jason Lynn still in his pit stall. Need about an average of 20-second pit stops for these drivers. That's Philippone getting the blue flag, hopping out of the way for the race leaders, Hendricks and McKenzie. I would expect Philippone to lift pretty heavy into turn one if he was still side by side with the leaders. Thankfully, no issues there. Hendricks and McKenzie slide right through, nice and easy. But now they're going to start pulling up the drivers who are battling for position. Brian Saab, Bertolucci in a battle for 19th. Steven Lakota down pit road for the first and only scheduled stop in that 94 machine. Now your top 10 still stretching that run out here. Hendricks and McKenzie, excuse me, a half-second apart. Schink and Carr have continuously lost time to the top two over this race, so this could be a battle for third at best for Schink and Carr. Now Carr came through tonight as your points leader, but Micah Hendricks is coming down pit road. Logan McKenzie opts to stay out here. Wondering what the right call is going to be. Schink also down pit road. Carr stays out in the number 19 machine. Is this going to put Hendricks back with clean traffic? Or is he going to find himself in the meat grinder? You can see McKenzie has drivers ahead of him. I believe that's 19th and 20th just ahead. Brian Saab and Ian Diaz Bertolucci. Hendricks out of pit road, 18.17 seconds. Schink and Gorman also rolling out of pit road. Dom Savio coming in for his one scheduled stop. 25 minutes left to go here at Summit Point Raceway. Round 9 of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 9. So McKenzie will have a 9-second advantage over James Carr. When will we see that 04 machine come down pit road? Hendricks rejoined the track back in 7th, but everybody ahead of him in the top 6 has yet to box here. Looks like McKenzie's going to come down pit road. Hard on the brakes. Will Carr follow suit? No, looks like Carr's going to stay out here and get the credit for a lap led. John Laws in the number 77. He's also down pit road, accompanied by Trevor Lambert-Lee. So we'll keep an eye out once this pit cycle is done. Damon Mitchell, Dan McFarland down pit road for their first stops. So right now it's showing McKenzie still ahead of Micah Hendricks, but man, it's going to be close. 3/10 between the two. Hendricks fires back, having more momentum against McKenzie. And it's like they never left. A quarter of a second separating second, third. And that is most likely going to be the battle for the lead, knowing James Carr still has to come down pit road. But Carr, to his credit, set his fastest lap of the race last time by a 1:14.7. So I would imagine that number 19 machine is going to be coming down pit road in the next lap or two at the latest. It's James Carr, Brian Sohn, the only two drivers who have yet to box here. Carr down pit road. Now McKenzie was just about a half second faster than Hendricks on pit road. I'm not sure if McKenzie wants to be out front of Hendricks here or feels that maybe he's in a better spot following that number 1 machine. Now McKenzie just needs to finish ahead of Hendricks to hold on to that second place point standing position. Takes a look to the inside line, maybe just hunting for some clean air for that 04 machine. Brian Stone on pit road, so it looks like we've had every driver complete their green flag pit cycles. Eric Staitzer comes down pit road for his second time of the night, having to come down early in the event to get some damages repaired. Dan McFarland still fighting his way back up towards the front, is tucked in behind Steven Lakota. Lakota, a tough driver to pass in anything he is in. Hendricks and McKenzie separated by a quarter of a second up front. Are we going to see McKenzie make a move before we are getting within 5-10 minutes of the white flag? I don't think so. Hendricks guards the inside line. McKenzie might try the long way around here. Staying right off that back left quarter panel, looks for the inside. Hendricks shuts the door. While that's going on, McFarland and Lakota side by side in the battle for 10th. McFarland making the move before the start-finish line. A gutsy spot to make a pass, and it's going to work out well. Lakota a quarter of a second behind. Lakota hops out of formation, but way too far back to make a move into 1. Especially with how consistent McFarland is each and every week. Another battle out on track. John Lawson and Edward Gorman can't get away from each other in the battle for 5th. The 77 of Lawson, the 137 of Gorman. Can't quite tell if the front of that number 77 is a little battle worn, I wonder. Or if that is just the livery. I think it's just the livery. But Gorman gets a big run in the start-finish line stretch here. As I see some high beams flashing in the background, I'm not quite sure who that was. We still have 22 drivers on the lead lap here at Summit Point. And Dan McFarland, let's pan back to that now 10th place driver, the number 23, once again sets the fastest lap of the race on 1:14.46. He is flying. Oates Test Company from Bertolucci in the battle for 14th. You can see Bertolucci hard on the brakes, really glowing those rear rotors now in these front-wheel drive machines. Drivers will move the brake bias pretty far back to try and get that machine to help rotate. Oh, and there goes Oates with the alternative line through the gravel. Bertolucci takes over the 14th place spot, nice and easy. And I think Oates may have had a slowdown here, as that may put Matt Zepka in the 490 machine running 16th, a little bit further up in the standings. Looking through the field, our Charger out on track. It's going to be Damon Mitchell in the number 27 machine. He's about 1.7 seconds back from Aiken in 8th, and about 1.1 ahead of Dan McFarland, who sits in 10th. I'd keep an eye out, though. McFarland has been a man on a mission here. Hendricks once again sets his fastest lap of the race, a 1:14.58. He's continuously improving as this run progresses. But man, Logan McKenzie staying right there with him. We go back to that battle for first and second. They're separated by about 0.3 of a second. Now Christian Oates came down pit road. I think he served a drive-through penalty if I had to wager. As something has happened, John Lawson is dropping down the stands. I think the 77 machine may have had a disconnect here. That would be gutting for Lawson. He was running so well and crawling his way back up towards the front. And yes, we got the report. John Lawson has some sort of technical difficulties and has temporarily left the raceway. It's going to be interesting to see. Maybe we can get him back out on track here. Hendricks and McKenzie, once again, almost identical pace. Dan McFarland has worked his way up into 8th, now getting around Damon Mitchell's number 27 machine. So McFarland doing whatever he can at this point to try and salvage some points. He came into tonight 5th in the championship, doing a good job, kind of overcoming diversity here and just trying to make lemonade out of lemons at Summit Point. A track that's deceptively simple until you're out there with 25 drivers. Now 22 of the 23 drivers that started this race still out on course. Hopefully John Lawson will be able to rejoin as well. As it has definitely been an evening of attrition. Less than 15 minutes left to go here at the AlphaTaurian Challenge, Season 9, Round 9 of Summit Point. And it's Micah Hendricks, Logan McKenzie, James Carr, your top 3. Francois Schink and Edward Gorman make up the top 5. Now we've had a big off track there from Christian Oates, who's looking for a safe spot to rejoin. As there goes Brian Saab in the 52 machine. Let's see what happened to Oates. It looked like it might have been a single car incident. Maybe a little bit too much curbing. Around he goes, a big hit on the front, but thankfully didn't look like too much damage there. We'll try and keep a report going and see if he comes down pit road, as he's going to be right ahead of Hendricks and McKenzie, still linked up nose to tail. And we get confirmation, yes, Oates is going to come down pit road for another stop here. I would imagine either it's going to be for repairs. He is in his pit stall. Mark Darnell, somewhere out on track, was having issues. He has a big moment. Does he get some help? Is it going to be by his lonesome in that 83 machine? Pushes wide. And then just is going to wait for a safe spot to rejoin here. Dan McFarland still making moves, set the once again the fastest lap of 1:14.3. Is putting the pressure on Aiken's 623 machine. This is going to be the battle for 7th. McFarland, all sorts of aggressiveness after that number 23 machine, salvaging the evening. And something has happened here to Logan McKenzie. He has lost a lot of time to Hendricks, now a 1.2 second gap. For the last 5-6 laps, they were within 3 or 4 tenths of each other at the most. And McKenzie has lost a lot of time here. Clicks off a 1:15.22, a full 6 tenths slower than Hendricks last time by. McKenzie trying to remount a charge, has right around a 1 second disadvantage. I'm hoping McKenzie didn't cook those tires early on. He closed quite a deficit to Hendricks in the opening half of the race. And we've only got 11 minutes left in this feature event. Hendricks still a 1.1 second gap as they dive into turn 1. McKenzie mounted a little bit of a comeback there on lap times. He's got to hope that maybe McKenzie gets stuck with a little bit of traffic, maybe uses up a little bit more rubber in that number 1 machine. But I think we're definitely seeing the tire fall off with just about 10 minutes left to go in this feature event. Hendricks does have traffic ahead. I believe that's going to be 20th place. Brian Saab in the number 52 machine will be shown the blue flag. Another battle out on track. Kurt Smith trying to fend off Bertolucci. Bertolucci, another one of those drivers that started off strong and then unfortunately found themselves working towards the back and having to recharge up towards the front. Oh, and a huge slide there from Smith. Bertolucci closing the gap rather quickly, looks to the inside line. Smith defends, but man, that was a big moment there for the number 3 machine. And Bertolucci all over the back. Bertolucci just going to bide his time, I think, waiting for the start-finish line. Less than 9 minutes left to go in this feature event. It's Hendricks, McKenzie, Carr, 1, 2, 3. Shink and Gorman round out the top 5. As Bertolucci all over the back bumper of Smith. Are we going to see a big send into turn 1? Smith trying to cover that inside line, but we've seen the outside line work well for several drivers in the past. Bertolucci looks to the outside line to carry a little bit more momentum. A little bit of contact there between Bertolucci and Smith. That's going to stall the run of that number 51 machine. The Brazilian driver, Bertolucci, trying to get around the Canadian of Smith. Not having any luck. That was going to be his best shot to make a pass, but that's the section right here that Smith had the big moment the lap prior. Something has happened to Brian Sohm. Way off track there into the gravel. Looks like he pushed wide. Oh, pushed wide ahead and got the car all sorts of loose. Tried to catch it. I think he at least keeps it off the tire barrier here at Summit Point. And look at Bertolucci putting the pressure on Smith. This is the battle for 12th. Bertolucci peeks to the inside line. Very important not to sacrifice any drive in that final corner. Damon Mitchell taking a spot away from Ben Aiken. Mitchell will move up to 8th ahead of Aiken's 623 machine. I think Bertolucci just gave up too much time there. Into the entry of the final corner is going to have to take another lap to get that momentum going. Meanwhile, Aiken trying to fire back against Mitchell. But Mitchell puts 3/4 of a second. So I think the closest battle we have out on track is going to remain Smith versus Bertolucci in the battle for 12th. Smith defending the number 3 machine. Bertolucci in the 51 looking for any way around he possibly can. And we got a report from John Lawson. Had connection to iRacing issues, not necessarily an internet problem. So gutting for Lawson in that number 77 machine who is running so well. And here we go. I think Bertolucci learned from his mistake the lap prior, backed up the corner to get the best drive he possibly could. Smith is going to guard that inside line once more. That is Zepka in the 490 machine behind as we watch the battle for 12th. Smith and Bertolucci going to be side by side in a one. Smith a little bit deeper. Bertolucci, a beautiful move up the inside line. Not sure if that was a legal pass. Very far to the inside line of the apex. We'll know shortly if Bertolucci has a slowdown or not. It looks like he's going to defend that position. And now here comes Matt Zepka, closing the gap in the 490 machine. Zepka, one of those drivers that had a very rough start to the evening. Got absolutely pulverized on the out lap, the first lap of the race, and really never had the opportunity to even see it coming. But Bertolucci putting on a bit of a gap here over Smith. Now Smith has company from behind with Zepka. Zepka still 6 spots down from where he originally started. Qualified 8th, running 14th on the circuit. Less than 5 minutes left to go here at Summit Point Raceway. The top 5 pretty well separated. Hendricks holds on to a 1.2 lead. McKenzie falling off the pace here. I think McKenzie may have used up too much tire. Now Bertolucci was having a couple more off-track excursions, so has to be careful that Smith and Zepka don't catch up. But I think these two battling so intently for 13th aren't too worried about Bertolucci sitting in 12th at this point. They're about 1.4 seconds back from that number 51 machine. We check back in. Race leader Micah Hendricks has had relatively clean track ahead of him and has pulled a 1.8, 1.9 second gap over McKenzie. McKenzie a full 8.6 seconds up over James Carr, but Carr having a great race. Everybody inside the top 3 has all gained 1 position from where they started. Our Chargers out on track. Damon Mitchell, number 27, he's running 8th. And Dom Savio, the number 81, running 15th. They are both up 7 spots gained from where they started. Hendricks again sets his fastest lap of the race, a 1:14.434. Fastest lap overall still held by Dan McFarland, that number 23 machine. There's McKenzie in the Yellow Flag Motorsports 04, 1.9 seconds back. And we talked about fastest laps. McFarland does it again, a 1:14.25. He's got Trevor Lambert-Lee ahead in the 333 machine. Lambert-Lee about 1.5 seconds up over McFarland. But McFarland gained almost a full second on that 6th place driver last time by. So McFarland may be able to grab another spot here by the time it's all said and done. Kurt Smith still has Matt Zepka right behind in that battle for 13th. They're about a 1/4 second apart. Loving the paint scheme on Zepka's 490, a very retro-esque livery on that car. All in all, it's been a great race so far, as it looked like Smith had a bit of a bobble. Zepka has to check up behind that number 3 machine. 2 seconds ahead of them, that's Bertolucci, who has been very slowly extending that gap as Smith and Zepka battle for that 13th place position. We've got about a minute left to go here at Summit Point. I'm not seeing the white flag from Barney, our flagman, so he's probably thinking Hendricks will be able to complete another lap. Zepka not quite able to make a move into turn one. Hard on the brakes, actually loses a little bit of time. No, gains it back, so well done. Slow in, fast out for Matt Zepka. Is it going to be enough to take the inside and up the hill? No, not quite. Here's Hendricks. Is the white flag out for the race leader? It's got to be. Surely it is. So Hendricks will take the checkered this time by. And doing a great job, leading by about 2 seconds. Now, we asked if Dan McFarland was going to be able to catch up to Lambert Lee. Yes is the answer. As they're side-by-side, McFarland trying the long way around the number 23 machine. Lambert Lee guards the inside, but this could put McFarland into a good position to make the pass. Charging up the hill, here comes McFarland. Oh, that is a clean move from that number 23 machine. So able to work his way all the way back to 6th now. But let's check back in. Micah Hendricks is going to make his way around the final couple of corners here at Summit Point. Down the start-finish line. Hendricks going to get another win to his name. I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, he will be the first driver to get 2 wins here this season. Logan McKenzie gets 2nd. And James Carr will round out the top 3. So Hendricks going to enjoy quite a cool-down lap as the rest of the field starts to close the gap. And there's still racing going on. Kevin Clark, Stephen Lakota linked up nose to tail. Clark's going to try a last-ditch pass, but just going to run out of time here, finishing 2/10 behind Lakota. What a great race for these competitors. Micah Hendricks pulls it down pit road. A very well-deserved win here today. We're going to try and get these drivers up here to victory lane. We're waiting on Hendricks, McKenzie, Carr to make their way up to the interview room. We've got McKenzie. We're waiting on Hendricks and Carr now. We've got Carr, so let's get things started. Up first, the third place driver, James Carr, the number 19 machine. James, a great clean race, and seemed like you had a lot of clean track there in the back half of it.
So I did have a lot of clean track, but I actually had an abysmal race. I'd say that's one of my worst performances this season, but yeah, we'll take it on the podium.
So that being said, not the night you were looking for. What was the expectations? Because you're able to gain 1 spot. Was it a qualifying issue? Was it a series of things that came together that made tonight difficult?
This is one of those tracks that, looking at before the season started, I knew I was going to struggle at. And I think I maximized at one of my worst tracks, but I have to say, I think P2 was on the table. I don't think P1 was ever going to be happening with Micah today.
Well, just a few races left in the season. We've got Interlagos, Long Beach Circuit, Circuit Zolder. Any of those tracks kind of reaching out and speaking to you that you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable at?
No, like I said, looking at the start of the season, I think actually the last 5 tracks were some of my worst tracks on iRacing. So, if I'm being completely honest, it's going to be a struggle bus here on out. I don't even own Zolder, so we'll see.
Atta boy, Carr. We're looking forward to a lot of action then. Before I let you go, celebrate and unwind a little bit. Who do you want to give a shout to that helped to bring home this podium for you and the team?
Whew. Shout out to lap one, turn ones through five. That's what made it happen.
Well, hey, easy enough, James. Always a pleasure, bud. Good to talk to you, and looking forward to hopefully having you up here in the final 3 races.
Hope so too. Thanks, brother.
That was James Carr bringing it home in third. Up next, Logan McKenzie bringing it home in second. Logan, that was a huge charge you mounted early on the race. The pit cycles put you guys within a quarter of a second. Was that a tire fall off issue we were seeing there in the last half of the race?
Yeah, you're not too far off. So these cars don't experience fall off. You see when you take the rubber off, you just have new rubber underneath, so you get more grip. But tire temps, the Elantra struggles with it, and the track was ice cold today, so it kind of masked the issues that the Elantra has at this track until about 5 minutes after the pit stop. I was no longer fuel saving, and I quickly pushed them out of the window. So through that really slow sector, Micah, like the Honda, it was soaring through there, and I just started to struggle. So I needed to be ahead of him after the pits. Almost got it done, but I'm still very happy with the result.
Yeah, I mean, it was a super clean race up front. You and Hendricks put on a great show. Now, I was asking Carr about this. Only 3 races left in the season. Any tracks that you're particularly comfortable at or maybe not super pumped about racing here late in the season?
We have Interlagos up next, which I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. But Long Beach, I love Long Beach, but I have not escaped Long Beach without some kind of meatball when we've done it. So that's a 50-50. Like I could be the fastest car there and end up in the back of the pack. It's happened before. Zolder's a wild card. That's going to be crazy as a finale. I don't know who's going to be good there.
If only we knew the guy that picked the season schedule, right? Well, Logan, so Summit, it was one of those tracks, looks deceptively simple. We've seen drivers really fight the track here today. What makes this track kind of difficult for how quote unquote easy it is to get around?
Well, there's a lot of sweeping odd corners. The main thing is, before the grass and gravel update, the biggest danger was catching grass or gravel somewhere and going flying. Now it's the opposite. If I dipped a sliver of my right left tire into that gravel at the end of on the last corner, I would lose over a tenth down the straight from my tire being in the gravel for milliseconds. So everyone had to stay super within the lines today, and uh, yeah, it was very difficult to both push but keep it completely on track. Because here you're kind of used to, especially at the top of turn 4, where that big gravel trap is. You used to just kind of going through it, put a
Yeah,
tire in it.
yeah,
Can't do that
it
anymore.
used to be you could be pretty comfortable pushing wide there, but you're like you said, not anymore. It could end that race early. But Logan, always a fantastic pleasure talking to you, buddy. A good second place tonight, finishing above Carr, so gaining some points back in the favor of you and Yellow Flag Motorsports. Before I let you go and handle all the race control shenanigans, who do you want to give a shout to that helped you bring home second tonight?
Shout out to James, actually. He and I did a little friendly test session here earlier in the week. And I mean, he podiumed too, so obviously we both benefited from that. I think we really figured it out there, and it was a good little friendly test.
Well, hey, nothing but friends here at ATC. Logan, thank you as always, and hope to have you back up here in the final 3 races of the season.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, sir. That was Logan McKenzie bringing it home in third. But up next, the man, the myth, the legend, Micah Hendricks. Welcome back to the top spot, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Micah, if I'm looking at the stands correctly, and it's a little bit confusing for just a broadcaster like myself, I believe you were the only driver so far this season to have 2 wins under their belt.
So far, it seems to be that way with, a couple of the really, really fast people having some incidents in the first lap. But yeah, lucky enough to get a good enough start and avoid some of the mayhem. I certainly wasn't the fastest car tonight, but got into the right position.
And Michael, once you came out on track after the pit cycle, you saw you're about a quarter of a second over Logan McKenzie. He was pacing you for quite a while. At what point in this race did you realize, I think he's fallen off, I can win this thing? I
was actually just talking about this with James in the interview waiting room, and it was at lap 38 when he broke for the hairpin in the front tires of the launch and just kind of gave up after that point. Then I had a 1.2 second gap and I was able to maintain. So I'd say about 10 laps from the end, I was like, okay, I might be able to do this.
Now, throughout the race, it was a long race for you drivers, no real chance of a break, but how are you able to focus on keeping the tire temps in the right zone throughout that run and knowing when to push and when not to maybe floor it a little bit more as you saw McKenzie and Carr starting to close the gap?
I think for me, it was honestly more up to the car's capabilities than mine. Obviously I have a lot of room to improve, showcased by, Dan McFarland running a 14.2. And then Logan, he caught me from 4 seconds back on just pure merit. So I think it's more up to the cars and when they hit their different tire operating windows. So I didn't really tire manage. It just kind of ended up finding itself in the window right when I needed it to.
Well, I'm glad things worked out well for you. The points championship definitely tightening up here. I mean, you're able to score a little bit of points on McKenzie and Carr here. So what's the expectations in the final 3 races of the year?
I think expectations, it's a little bit hard because we're going into, Long Beach, Interlagos, and what's the last one? I don't recall.
Zord, I think?
Oh, Zolder.
Yep, Zolder.
I think going into the last couple of races will be about minimizing mistakes. Had a couple unfortunate first lap incidents the last handful of sprint races, so always nervous going into those sprint races. So I think it's going to be minimizing the points losses in those sprint race reverse grids because me, James, and Logan, and Dan, and a couple others on occasion are just. The pace is absolutely identical. There was a handful of laps, Logan and I think we ran the same exact lap time. I look up and I was like, oh, okay, we're running the same lap times. So I think it's just going to be who can make it through some incidents. For example, lap 1 today, I made it through kind of the nonsense of lap 1 and 2, and that's what gave me enough gap to get the tires into their operating window.
Well, I'm glad things worked out well for you, Micah. That was a ton of fun to watch from up here in the booth as well for the fans at home. And you've got the privilege, the pleasure, the final send-offs of the night. Who do you want to give a shout to that helps make it happen?
I'd like to give a shout out to, I think specifically my dad. We just spent the last week racing some go-karts. So just massive shout out to him for enjoying that last week. And my wife was there as well, and grandparents. So just all the family around me to let me enjoy living life and racing cars.
Micah, living the dream, always a pleasure, and we always wish you the best on and off the virtual track as well as the real racetrack. Congratulations on a great win tonight, and hope to see you do well in the final 3 rounds.
Yep, appreciate that, James. Thank you.
Very welcome, sir. On behalf of the AlphaTaurian Challenge, this was Season 9's Round 9 of North America's largest front-wheel drive series. It was Micah Hendricks in the top spot, Logan McKenzie finishing 2nd, and James Carr finishing 3rd. On behalf of ATC as well as Team Goon Squad Broadcasting, my name has been James East. Thank you so much for spending your Monday night with us, and we'll see you at the next one. Have a great night, everybody.